And we're just about to do our overhead flow. You are going to need a broomstick and or a mop handle and a light weight, so a light kettlebell if you've got one. So I'm using a 6 kilogram kettlebell. All right, come and lie on your backs. See me. Okay. So if you lie on your backs, feet hip distance apart. Okay, so we're going to work on our connection, posture and breath. And like I said, today's overhead position, overhead movement. And so what we're trying to focus on today is when we're taking the arms over our head, we're trying to keep the ribs and pelvis in connection. So obviously overhead movement can be limited by your core, so we're going to work on that. It can be limited by thoracic extension, so we're going to work on that, and some shoulder mobility as well. So let's work on our connection first of all. So feet hip distance apart. We should be feeling connected underneath both our feet, underneath the lumbosacral junction, TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. Just make sure the live can see me properly. Okay, so we're going to start with the feet and we're just going to shift the weight from side to side, because we want to feel nice and balanced underneath both our feet. So we want to feel equal pressure from left to right foot. So shift the weight until you feel like you've got better balance between the left and right foot. And then we're going to think about whereabouts on the foot you're feeling that pressure. So are you feeling it on the outside or are you feeling it on the inside of the foot? So if you're feeling it more on the outside, I want you to try and pull that inner arch down towards the floor without lifting the outer arch. So we're trying to keep that neutral ankle position. And if you're feeling it more on the inner arch, you're going to pull the outer part of the foot down towards the floor, but trying to keep the inner arch on the floor. So we're not lifting into that supinated position. Okay, so once you feel like you've got that good foot connection, we're going to work our way up to the lumbosacral junction. So I want you to tilt your pelvis backwards and forwards. So we're moving from a posterior pelvic tilt where the spine is indented into the floor, into an anterior pelvic tilt where the spine lifts away from the floor. Alternating between those movements, feeling that pelvic tilt, that pelvic rock as you're going backwards and forwards. And you should feel a stretch in the spine as you're doing it. And you want to stop in the midpoint between the two end ranges. So your back should be feeling flat on the floor. There shouldn't be any gap underneath your back. But then you shouldn't be indented into the floor either, so you don't want to be curved into the floor. So it's nice and neutral, neutral pelvis, neutral spine. Rib cage and pelvis, we want to work on those now. So we imagine that they're like the pages of a book. We want to pull the pages together so the ribs and pelvis are parallel with each other. Because what we want to try and avoid is having this rib flared and lumbar extended position. So we pull the rib cage and pelvis together, bringing the rib cage down towards the pelvis and towards the floor. And then you should feel better connection underneath the TL junction and the floor now. Work your way up to your shoulder blades, so they should be nice and equal from side to side. So shift the weight from side to side until you feel a bit more balanced. And then we're going to work on the shoulders themselves, so we want them to be out of this elevated forward position and internally rotated. So we're going to activate underneath the back of the shoulder and below it. So externally rotate and depress the shoulder towards the back pocket, and that just pulls the shoulder into a more neutral position. And then the back of the head wants to push straight back down towards the floor. We don't want to go into neck extension or neck flexion. So by pushing the head down towards the floor, we're activating the deep neck flexors, these front muscles at the front of the neck, the stabilising neck muscles. And we want to try and maintain this posture throughout the flow, so keeping a neutral pelvis, neutral spine, spine nice and tall and long, shoulders neutral, and the head neutral as well. So trying to keep those muscles at the front of the neck active. So put one hand on the chest, one hand on the tummy. Going to get our breath in the right order first of all, so you're just going to breathe in. And we should be feeling the hand on the tummy lift. And as you breathe out, you'll feel the hand on the tummy lower. Shouldn't be feeling anything through the hand on the chest. So really try and focus on what your breath's doing. Try and pull your mind away from anything else and just focus on your breath. If you've got this down, just use this time as a bit of meditation. Just trying to clear your thoughts. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, through pursed lips, like you're blowing through a straw. So really focusing on that hand on the tummy, lifting with the breath in and lowering with the breath out. So when you feel like you've got your breath in the right order, you put your hands around your waist, or if you can do this without your hands around your waist and you can create your 360 breath, absolutely fine, that's no problem. Just you don't need to put your hands around your waist if you can do that. But if you can't, put your hands around your waist, keep your shoulders neutral, so don't let them go forwards, don't let your neck go into extension. And to wake the muscles up, we're just going to cough. Feel the muscles expand the whole way around, and that's what we want to feel as we're breathing in. We're going to feel that expansion, 360 degrees, the whole way around the abdomen. So you want to feel it equal from side to side and from front to back. Where most people struggle is round the back, so let's just start around the front and just make sure you've got it there. So put your fingers into the front muscles, really try and think about them, visualise where they are, give them a poke, and think about trying to lift and push your fingers away as you're breathing in. And then lowering as you're breathing out. Again, it wants to feel equal from side to side. If one side is feeling less active, give that side a prod, a poke, wake it up, really concentrate on that side. Trying not to tense the tummy muscles, so this is a 360 expansion outwards, so think of it like you're blowing up a balloon, so we're creating a cylinder, nice smooth cylinder. once you've got the front muscles, you're going to poke the side bits with your thumbs, give them a prod, and think about pushing the thumbs outwards to the side with the breath in. Again, make sure you're breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. And when you feel like you've got the side bits, put your thumbs into the back. Again, cough, wake the muscles up. Feel those muscles, and then think about pushing your thumbs down towards the floor. Oh, I can hear myself. Oh, that was weird. Okay, yeah, think about pushing your thumbs down towards the floor as you're breathing in, and relaxing as you're breathing out. And then you want to make sure that you're tying all this together, so we're focusing on creating that expansion equally, front, side, back. And at the same time, you should feel like your pelvic floor is shifting towards your feet when you breathe in, and relaxing when you breathe out. Okay, so once you've got your 360 breath, we're going to work on the brace, which you're going to need when you're doing something that needs more stability. So we're going to create the 360 breath. And then before you take your breath out, I just want you to create the feeling like when you're about to fart. So you're going to breathe in 360, and then do an outward push, an outward pressure with your abdominal wall the whole way around. And then try and keep the muscles active as you're breathing out. So this is where the breath in through the nose and out through the mouth through pursed lips really helps. So imagine blowing through a straw on the breath out, keeping those muscles in the abdominal wall active. Still creating your cylinder, so we're not tensing the tummy muscles. So you shouldn't be feeling your six pack as you're breathing in and out. Do a couple more breaths. Do one more. Okay, so we're going to start with some shoulder flexion, just without anything at the moment. So no broomstick, no mop handle. So we're just going to start with the palms on the floor. And we're just going to take the arms back, so we're flexing the shoulder. And as you flex the shoulder, I want you to externally rotate the shoulder at the same time, so the thumbs are pointing towards the floor. And then bring them back down and take the palms down towards the floor. So when you're taking your arms up over your head, if you get to a point where you're starting to feel your shoulders, your ribs lifting and starting to flare, and you feel like your lumbar spine's starting to extend, just pause in that position. Take a 360 breath in, and then on the exhalation, you're going to try and get your shoulders a little bit further back. Pause again, breathe in. 360 breath, and on the exhalation we're going to try and get back a little bit further. So really focusing on keeping that rib cage down, keeping that neck active, so you're going to push the head down towards the floor, making sure you don't go into that neck extension. So keep the neutral neck position. Palms to the floor when you're bringing them down. Thumbs to the floor when you're bringing them up, creating that external rotation in the shoulder. Just do a couple more. Nice and steady, just goes as controlled and slowly as you can in your own time. Grab hold of your broomstick or your handle, mop handle, and let's just move myself down a little bit because my fan's in the way. Keeping your feet on the floor, knees and hips bent. Start with your arms wide, and then we're just going to take the shoulders back over the head, concentrating on keeping the ribs and pelvis in connection. So, taking the arms down, and then back up, just in your own time. Keep focusing on your breath as well at the same time. Then if you can, bring your hands a little bit narrower. And then just gradually work your way, bringing the arms and hands a little bit narrower, but only go as far that you can keep your ribs and pelvis connected. So if you get to a point where you can't bring your hands any closer together without going into this rib flare, lumbar extension, just stop with your hands in that position and just work that range of movement. Do a couple more. Make sure you keep your wrists straight as well as you go back. So don't cheat the movement by taking the wrists into extension to get the broom to the floor. So only go as far back as your wrists can stay straight as well. Okay, so just put the broomstick to one side. We're going to do some single leg lifts. So we're just going to lift one leg and lower, and lift the other leg and lower, opposite leg, lower. So alternating legs in your own time. Just going to move this camera a little bit. So keep doing that. And then from single legs, we're going to take both legs up. So create your 360 breath. Create your outward brace. And lift the legs up into the air. We want to make sure the pelvis doesn't tilt forwards as we lift. And lower. And lift. And lower. Lift. Keep breathing, keep creating your outward brace, so we don't want to tense the tummy muscles. Just do one more, and then we're going to finish off in the 3-month supine. So you want feet higher than the knees, knees over the hips, hips in external rotation and abduction, and your feet and ankles want to be neutral. So no pointed toes, no feet turned inwards or outwards. And we're going to start do some shoulder flexion again, so without a broom at first. So take the arms, so palms down, and then thumbs to the floor. Palms down, thumbs to the floor. And we want to try and keep the elbows straight as well, so try not to let the elbows bend to get the thumbs to the floor. Keep those neck muscles engaged, so keep pushing your head towards the floor, so back of the head towards the floor. Try and see if you feel a difference between the shoulders. Like, I always struggle to get my left side down at the same time as the right side. Just have a think about what's going on either side. So try and make sure that it's balanced and it's moving at the same time and contacting the floor at the same time. All the while thinking about your rib cage and pelvis connection. So bring your knees in, just give your hips a little bit of a rest. Then bring your legs back into your 3-month supine, grab hold of your broomstick again, start with your arms a bit wider and taking the arms back, keeping the wrists straight and in a neutral position again. Don't let the wrists go into extension. And if you feel like that position is absolutely fine, you're not getting any rib flare, it's nice and easy, bring your wrists a little bit closer together. Again, have a think about what's happening from side to side. Does it feel balanced? Does the movement feel nice and smooth both sides? Does the back of the hand touch the floor at the same time? Do one more. And then pop the broomstick down. Give your knees a hug again. And then we're going to go into the roll. So with the roll, we're going to take the hands into the air. We're going to lift the head slightly, look to the direction you're going to roll. I'm going to move over so otherwise you won't be able to see me. And roll onto one side, nice and controlled. Shoulders and pelvis moving at the same time, like you've got your Lego body, it doesn't disconnect. And then when you're coming back, make sure you've got your straight spine as well. And then when you come back, take your arms back into flexion. And then back into the middle and roll to the other side. Control, spine nice and straight. Make sure you get stacked up on top of your shoulder as you go onto that side. And then roll back. Control it backwards. Take the arms back into shoulder flexion again. And then we're just going to roll from side to side in your own time. Adding in the shoulder flexion in the middle. Use the top arm as if you're trying to reach for something when you go onto your side. So it's like you're trying to roll to grab hold of something. And then what I want you to do now is we're going to roll onto the side, up into a low oblique sit, and we're just going to lift and reach the shoulder and the arm overhead, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Lower back down, roll onto your back, go on to the opposite side, low oblique sit and lift and take the arm overhead. Ribs and pelvis in connection. Down. Roll onto your back again. Roll onto the other side. Lift into low oblique sit and lift. Take the arm above your head. Down. Lower back down. Opposite side. So we're just going to go from side to side doing this. And then after low oblique sit, it's high oblique sit. So we're going to roll, go into low oblique sit, so on the forearm, and then up onto the hand, and stretch out, so lift the bum and take the arm above the head, ribs and pelvis in connection, down, into low oblique sit, onto your side, onto your back, roll onto the other side, up onto your hand and lift. So again, in your own time, go back down to low oblique sit, onto your side, onto your back, onto your side again to low oblique sit, up into high, and make sure the shoulder stays active as you do this. So don't let the shoulder come forwards. So active shoulder. Ribs and pelvis connected. And then I'm going to end up onto my left side, so you just go whichever way you can see me. So in this oblique sit, and you're going to rotate your knees up towards the ceiling, so you're twisting your hips into the tall sit. So make sure the spine's nice and straight if you can. Okay, and then we want to make sure that the spine's nice and long, and we're going to take the arms up overhead. Again, working on keeping the rib cage and pelvis in connection. And keep the neck in a neutral position. Try not to let yourself round and go into this neck extension. So nice and long through the spine. And arms up, fingertips to the ceiling. Again, take the shoulders into external rotation as you're going up, because shoulder flexion is a coupled movement with external rotation and abduction. So just take your arms into external rotation and slight abduction when you flex it, and then down. So really controlling that movement and really fighting to keep that nice long spine, not rounding through the spine. Keep breathing, focusing on your 360 breath. Let's do a couple more. And then we're just going to rotate back round into the oblique sit. You want to hinge forwards, lift and then lift the arms. And then lower down. And you're going to rotate round to the opposite side, lift and flex the shoulders. Back down. Rotate round. So when we rotate back round, make sure in the tall sit we end up with a nice straight spine. So every time we take the arms above the head, we're thinking about the ribs and pelvis staying in connection. So as we're going down as well, make sure it's nice and slow so you don't just land really heavily on your knees. And then this next one, we're going to lift up and take the back leg forwards. So from this oblique, lift, pull that back leg forwards into your high kneel. Okay, so we want to make sure we're not too narrow with the foot. Like foot out to the side so that we can get the pelvis level with the floor. So we don't want uneven hips, and then we don't want to be in lumbar extension, so we're going to come into a neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Okay, have your broomstick and lightweight nearby. So we're just going to start with alternating shoulder flexion in this high kneel position. Really focusing on whichever arm's going up, that the ribs and pelvis are staying in connection. So even if that means just holding onto your rib cage and making sure that it stays down. And then take both arms up. So obviously you can't feel what's going on in your rib cage now, so we're going to have to really think about what's going on.
Now I have to go, my shopping's coming.
Oh, okay, Colette. See you soon. Bye, no problem. See ya. Okay, so grab hold of your kettlebell. And we're just going to put it in one arm. We're going to do both arms. So keeping the high kneel, and we're just going to have the hand pointing up towards the ceiling. Don't be like gripping onto it, and try and keep the wrist neutral. So just do this pressing movement in your own time. Just focusing on keeping the ribs down. I'm just going to do one more. So obviously we don't want to do too many to the point where your technique starts to fail. Swap hands. And then do the same on the other side. Again, ribs down, so I'm just going to feel my ribs. This left side is the one I struggle with. focus on keeping the neck in a neutral position. So we're keeping these deep neck flexors active. We're not letting the neck go into extension or come forwards. Okay. I'm going to pop mine down now, so that was starting to get a bit too much. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the high kneel to stand, so curl the back foot under and lean into that front foot, and you're going to stand and take the arms up into flexion and then back down, so take the leg back and slowly lower down. Reset every time, so just in your own time we're going to stand and back down. We want to keep the knee tracking the second and third toe, pelvis level with the floor, so really slow every movement down, so we're not rushing, so we can really focus on what is happening in the pelvis and with that front knee. And then if you get hold of your broomstick, put it above your head, keeping the rib cage down, and stand. And slowly lower down. And stand. Slowly lower down. Stand. Slowly down. Just do a couple more. Reset every time. And slowly down. Okay, put this broomstick down. Put your hands onto the floor. Pull that front leg back and then take the other leg forwards. So we're going to go through that again. So we're going to start with some single arm shoulder flexion. Making sure we're not too narrow with that front foot. Keep the knee tracking the second and the third toe. So if your front foot's forwards, try not to let the knee be inwards, so it keeps out, so you're activating those glutes. Again, feel what's going on in the ribs. And then go into double arm flexion. And we're trying to keep the elbows straight. I'm not the best at this. My shoulders aren't the best. Really visualise what's happening in the rib cage, so keeping those ribs and pelvis connected. And then grab hold of your kettlebell, and we're just going to do some shoulder press, keeping the wrist neutral, fingers pointed to the ceiling, rib cage down. Just do as many as you can feel like you've got a good position and you're not really straining to do it. So I'm going to stop on that side there, and then I'm going to swap and do the other side. This side's my better side. But we don't want to do any more really on the better side than the worse side. So put the kettlebell down, and then we're going to curl the back foot under, and we're going to lean into that front leg and stand into shoulder flexion. Arms down, leg back, pelvis level with the floor, slowly lower down. And again, lean into it, arms up, down, leg back, slowly down. Every time reset, make sure you've got your pelvis level with the floor. Then grab hold of your broom, and we're going to do some overhead lunges. So slowly down, up, slowly down. When you come in backwards as well, make sure you don't bring the back leg too narrow, because you're going to end up narrowing the front leg when you lower down. So if you take it back so it's in a good wide position as well. Just do a couple more. Okay, put the broom down, hands down, front foot back into bear, down into quadruped, and then we're just going to do some low quadruped thoracic extension. So find your neutral spine, elbows and shoulders active, elbows and shoulders, God I don't know what I'm talking about at all. Shoulders active, so you're going to push the floor away with your forearms and bring the shoulders into external rotation and depression. And we're just going to work on our upper back. So either, if you're quite rounded in your upper back, we're going to work on pulling the upper back down towards the floor without going into lumbar extension. But if you're quite flat through the upper back, you really want to focus on spreading the shoulder blades and lifting the upper back towards the shoulder blades. So you're pushing the floor away, but then you don't want to go into that lumbar flexion. So keeping the neutral spine. I'm going to keep working on my thoracic extension because that's what's wrong with my back. Keep your neutral neck, don't let your neck go into extension, so nice long neck. And then we're just going to flex the shoulders. So we're moving the bum backwards, hinging at the hip again, but flexing through the shoulder. So we're going into that shoulder flexion, the overhead position again. And then come forwards. And again, we're working on our neutral pelvis and neutral spine in this position as well. So even though it's an overhead flow, we're thinking about everything. So put backwards and forwards. Keep breathing, don't forget to breathe, 360 breath. So obviously we need this thoracic mobility to get our arms over our head without extending through the lower back. Okay, then come up into quadruped. Again, find your neutral. Push the floor away with your hands, so we're activating into the shoulder girdle. If you're like me and you're rounded, pull the upper back down towards the floor. If you're a bit flatter, just push the floor away and try and spread the shoulder blades and get the spine towards the shoulder blades, strengthening up those rhomboids. And we're hinging backwards again, so shoulders into flexion, keeping the ribs and pelvis in connection, so don't let them flare in this position either. Hinging at the hip again, and then forwards, keeping the neutral pelvis, and make sure we're not going into the neck extension, so we're keeping the neck nice and long. Forwards and backwards, just gently rocking between shoulder flexion and shoulder extension. Let's do one more. And then you're going to curl your back feet under. We're going to keep our neutral pelvis, so you're going to need to create your brace. Lift your bum in the air. And then we want to hinge the hips backwards and flexing the shoulders, keeping that thoracic spine down towards the floor. And then come out of it into shoulder extension and flexion. And back. I'm just going to lower down a second, give my legs a little bit of a shake. So, and then this next one, we're going to hinge backwards. Just going to hold it for a second, and then we're going to walk the hands back into a squat. So, find your neutral pelvis, lift your bum in the air. We're going to hinge right backwards into this overhead squat position. A bear overhead squat. Hold that position. Walk your hands backwards into your squat. And then we're going to stand and flex the shoulders, keeping the ribs and pelvis in connection. And make sure when we come up, we don't go into this lumbar extension. And then we're going to come down, and we're going to bring the arms down with us. And then keep the spine nice and long, and then come up again. Keeping the pelvis neutral, arms up into the air, rib cage and pelvis in connection. And down. So really slow it down so you can feel what's happening in your pelvis. If you need to readjust the pelvis. And down. And up. And down. And then we're going to grab hold of the pole. Put it above our heads. We're just going to do a few overhead squats. So make sure you've got your ribs and pelvis in connection. Take a breath. You've got your neutral spine. And we're just going to lower down just as far as you can. And then up. Really controlling what's happening in the pelvis and the lower back. So just do a couple more in your own time.